911 responders. What is a call that you will never forget? My first cardiac arrest call. An old lady had woken up to her husband not breathing. He'd passed at some point during the night, it seems, but all I was given at the start of the call was that he wasn't breathing, so I launched into CPR instructions. They lived out of town, so it took the ambulance crew about 25 minutes to get out to them. There was nothing crazy about the call, and I've dealt with way more traumatic calls in the 2 years since, but at some point during the call, she realized he was gone and you could hear it in her voice. That shift in tone is what sticks with me. 911 dispatcher here. There's many that stick with me, but the absolute hardest one was a mother finding her child after the child had committed suicide by hanging. She was absolutely destroyed, but I could clearly hear her fighting to keep control as I walked her through getting the child down and attempting CPR. I knew that child was gone, but the mother refused to give up. I stayed with her on the phone and counted compressions with her while we waited for police and the ambulance to arrive, listened to her alternate between counting and begging her child to come back. When the EMTs showed up and took over, she finally let it go. That scream broke me, and I can still hear it to this day. Edit to add, thank you so very much for all the love, support, and awards. Any dispatcher will tell you we don't do this job for acknowledgement, but it's definitely nice to know that we're appreciated. There are so many of you reaching out with your own stories, and I want you all to know. My inbox is always open. If you need a friendly, non-judgmental ear, I've got 2 of them for you. To those who lost someone of their own, words are never enough, but I'm sending you love and peace, heart, heart, heart. I've heard that scream too. My friend killed himself and his mom found him and immediately rang my mom. I was 7 feet away and heard my friend's mom scream through the phone. 7 years and I remember that scream. While in the hospital for my child's delivery, we heard a mother scream when her baby was stillborn. That scream haunts me, and always will. When the doctor told me they couldn't find my son's heartbeat 2 days before my scheduled C-section, all I could do was say my baby. And cry. A light-hearted one. My friend got a call from a very cross-sounding old lady that was absolutely furious because her neighbors had stolen her plants. When my friend asked her how she knew it was them, the woman said because there's holes in my yard and she planted them in her effing garden. I'm going to go take them back, I have a shovel, and you probably won't get here in time to do anything about it. Thank goodness it was a slow day because my friend had to stay on the line for at least 15 minutes to convince her to wait for a cop to come by and talk to her neighbors for her. This is effing hilarious. I've been reading these comments for more than an hour. Full of depth and despair, but this made me crack up. Thanks dude/girl. Man called to report a male was breaking into his neighbor's vehicle across the street. A few minutes into the call, the man came and started to break into the caller's vehicle. A few minutes later, the man spotted my caller and broke into his house from the window. Spent 10 minutes listening to physical fight when I finally heard the police enter the house and say there's blood everywhere. Both intruder and caller died. Oh, and another 911 dispatcher had my caller's wife and kids on another line who were hiding upstairs and heard everything. I talked to a lot of people who were beaten in the final moments of their lives, but you usually get them after the situation occurred. This caller was just trying to look out for his neighbor, and I spent a good 15 to 20 minutes bantering while waiting for officers to arrive and get the auto thief. Getting to joke around and get to know someone's personality before they violently die hit a lot different than taking a call after violence had occurred. Got to love cities where a literal felony is in progress, and the police still take over 20 minutes to show up. I had a drunk driver hit my vehicle and continue driving, managing to get all the way home, without effing killing anyone thankfully, and when the police showed up to meet me 45 minutes later, they dazed that she can't be arrested because they don't know if she started drinking when she got home. Despite my day cam footage of her swerving all over the road, and stumbling out of her car when she got home. She was eventually held responsible in civil court, and I was reimbursed for damages and a medical exam. 18-year-old took Mephadrone and attacked his mother with a knife. She locked herself in the bathroom and called 999, UK here. We turn up and the son is butt-ass naked climbing out the window in the front door which he'd smashed. He gets taken to the ground and cuffed. Me and another managed to crawl through the window without cutting ourselves and find mother inside. Place is covered in blood smeared up the walls and every knife from the kitchen bloodied and discarded round the house. The adrenaline is just starting wear off as the paramedics arrive for Mum, and as they're treating her, we go to the kitchen and find a dismembered member sat on the worktop. Turns out the kid had cut his own penis off after his mum locked herself in the bathroom. If you Google meow meow, slang name for Mephadrone, one of the first results is an article about this call in Rolling Stone magazine, although they say he was hanging out the bedroom window and he wasn't, but yeah, I will never forget holding a penis that was not attached to somebody. Not having to utter the words whose penis is this? Does he have a penis? And wait, don't forget his penis. The ambulance almost left with him while we still had it in the house. Whose penis is this? Ah, the new game show I never knew I wanted. That's a lot to unpack. I almost feel bad for laughing at the last part. I'm not a first responder, but a dentistry student. Dentistry professionals can work in the hospital as trauma surgeons of the face. This facial surgeon showed us a case of a man that didn't pay his drug dealers. They took him to an empty field and blew his face off with a shotgun and left. Surprisingly, the man survived and woke up half an hour later and called the police. They spent hours trying to pinpoint his exact locating because at this point he was somewhere in the middle of an open field and obviously he didn't have eyes anymore to help them. He was taken to the hospital and his surgery took 18 hours, but he did survive. Edit. Today he lives in a rest home with a tube helping him breathe and another helping him eat. Holy crap. Obviously he didn't have eyes anymore. Holy effing Christ. Harley motorcycle tipped over and the clutch lever went into a 4-year-old's eye. Parent was on the line asking what to do. Suddenly, she said, "They're going lift the motorcycle." I emphatically told her to tell them to stop and wait for rescue and EMS. Rescue ended up cutting off the clutch lever and transporting the kid to hospital. She underwent surgery. That was 1982. Just last year, I met the lead rescue officer and the girl herself, now fully grown. They wanted to meet the 911 operator that saved her vision. How the hell? The eye can move and distort within the socket, and what probably happened was the lever went in next to the eye. Removing it by just lifting the bike would probably have done irreversible damage, while having doctors operate to remove it allowed them to do so in a way to minimize further trauma. The human body is effing weird, man. You can trip over a curb and hit your head wrong and die. You can fall out of an airplane at altitude and survive. I used to live in a trailer court and had my Harley Road King parked in my driveway. Sometimes I would come home from work and my motorcycle headlight would be on and kids' footprints on the seat. One day I actually caught 3 neighborhood kids climbing and playing on it. I walked over to a couple of the parents' house and told them what was happening. They seemed to not care. I had to chase them off my porch and driveway a few times. I took out $1 million liability insurance policy while I lived there to be covered if any stupid crap happened like in your post. Thankfully nothing happened and I moved out a few months later. Someone called stating they had seen a man on a small island on the lake hours ago, but now the man was gone and his boat is still out there. An older woman called in a half hour later stating her husband had gone missing. He was last seen taking his boat out on the lake sometime overnight. The increasing tension in her voice as she noticed sheriff's deputies were already dredging the lake was something else. She was calm but clearly actively dealing with the fact her husband was likely dead. They found his body not long after I hung up with her. Sometimes it's the people screaming that get to you, sometimes it's the quiet acceptance of a horrible truth that stays with you longer. 4 years ago, when my dad wouldn't answer his phone, his girlfriend called me. We both were concerned that something may have happened to him. She was very apprehensive about driving to his house to check on him. I finally told her I would drive 2.5 hours to check on him. She was only a half hour from his house. Since it was already 10 at night, she told me not to worry about driving up to check, and she would. That was the longest half hour of my life. I paced my house. I resigned myself that he had died. She called me when she got to his house, and I'll never forget the scream she let out when she found him dead on the deck from a massive heart attack. Her scream will haunt me, but that half hour of dread was awful. I can't imagine what that half-hour drive was like for her. I have a similar story about waiting for the call. My son had made friends with a little girl while we were living at an apartment complex a few years ago. I also made friends with her mom when they were all playing at the playground. We would text and hang out outside while the kids played. Her and her husband were so sweet and the kids all got along great. She confided in me that her and her husband were in recovery for heroin abuse. One day my son walked over to her house to play and my daughter and I followed a few minutes later. We found the mom in her room passed out and I knew right away she used again. I kicked the kids out and had them get a neighbor while I dialed 911 and started chest compressions. Once the ambulance came and took her away, I called her mom and told her. Her daughter had nowhere to go, so I just brought her to my house while we waited for the call. I knew in my heart she was gone, but her daughter kept saying, "I hope my mom is okay." My son is the sweetest kid and best friend anyone could have, and he just held her hand on the couch while I ordered a pizza. It was the longest hour of my life, but it was nothing compared to that little girl. I'll never get over her death and I still think about both of them all the time. Went to a local sub shop with my mom, a retired nurse, and my girlfriend at the time. While we're standing in line, we hear a guy yelling at his friend to wake up. Carl, wake up. Wake the F up. We turn around to see what's going on and this dude looks dead. Pale skin, blue lips. My mom lays him out on the floor, calls for an ambulance, and starts compressions. The pair also had a little girl with them, apparently Carl's daughter. The most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen was that little girl asking her daddy to wake up. It's been 7 years or so and I can still see it like it was this afternoon. Semi-happy ending, Carl didn't die. Ambulance shows up, narcans him and boom, like it never even happened. Of course, they took him away in the ambulance and his friend got arrested. Turned out he'd been shooting up in the bathroom. Since then though, I've thought about that little girl so many times and always hope she is doing well. You're a good parent for that. The acceptance ones are always scarier because to me they seem to be broken quickly and you never know what they're thinking. The ones screaming and yelling haven't accepted it yet, but you at least know what's going on somewhat with them. Little 4-year-old girl got ran over by her grandmother with a lawnmower that was on. It was not the gore or the blood that got me, it was the utter panic of the family, and the way they broke down when the helicopter took off with her inside. Was she okay? Yes, she did survive and made a full recovery minus losing a leg. Good job saving her. Or helping to save her, I don't know what role you were in. This isn't mine, but a friend of mine fielded this call. An elderly gentleman called 911 to notify them that his wife had passed in her sleep. Only it was like 7 o'clock at night. Apparently he just couldn't deal with it emotionally, so he got her dressed, took her out to the car, and drove around doing his errands for the day. Watched some TV together. And then after 12 or so hours he finally sort of accepted that she was gone and called 911. Came to read disturbing stories, but this. It's just too sad, man. Grief makes people do some crazy things. I hope it helped him to have one last day with his wife. Yeah, I don't think this is actually crazy at all. Just societal judgment making people feel it's considered that way. But on a personal level, it resonates. The past few years I've lost quite a few pets. I get to most people it's not the same, but I always feel the need to hold them and talk to them, a sort of last goodbye, I guess. I know that feeling way too well. I lost my dog last summer and I found her at about 2 a.m. I couldn't call my wife at work or anything and she didn't get home till 7. I held that dog and sobbed. She was my everything. I lost my cat to kidney failure in February, but the worst one was my horse. He was 33. We had to put him down in October. Putting down a horse is effing traumatizing. As soon as he went down, I put my arms around his head and just told him everything is going to be okay. He didn't get picked up till the next day, so I had lots of time to hold him and tell him how he changed me. Animals are different, man. They give a different love than humans do. I miss all 3 of them so much. 2020 has been a crap effing year. Rowdy and Sadie. Web link. This one made me shed a tear. I don't know why. All of these are so sad. To think you can love someone so much and have this happen just breaks my heart. I think this scenario would actually make a good movie. Sucks the death process in parts of the world is so rushed. He knew that was his only chance to spend a last real day with her. I like the rituals where they bring the body into the home for a few days or so people can say the farewell. I feel bad for the dude. A mother called because her kid pulled a pot of oil off the stove and it spilled on his face. She said she could see the skin peeling off his face. Friendly reminder to never point the handles of your pots or pans off the stove. I swear when I was younger I watched an animated thing where the handle of a pot on the stove turned into a snake or something, and that kept me away from the stove until I was plenty tall enough to survey the situation from above. Duly noted. I can't believe this hasn't occurred to me as a parent of an infant who's learning to walk. Get an oven lock too. Always use the back burners and never leave unattended. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.